Welcome to The Gap, where it's our mission to bridge the gap between training and on-field performance.
I'm Brett Hart, owner of Hitman Performance.
And I'm Dan Labadia, the owner of Javelin.
Hope you guys enjoy the show.
Welcome to this episode of The Gap. Today we have Sam Weeks from Garage Strength on the show today. Sam is a coach and an athlete out of Garage Strength. He works for Throws University as well, their throwing program there. Sam, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Starting the day off right.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you had some sessions this morning?
No, I did not have any sessions this morning. I have sessions later today. A lot of this morning was just getting my online clients just situated, just making sure that programs are all up to date and, everything is just a lot of the social media stuff. I do that stuff in the morning. Try to get that done and then just prep for coaching later in the day.
Sweet. Yeah, that's a big thing that I've modeled after Garage Strength, is really trying to do my best to bridge the gap between that strength side and the track and field side, and especially obviously the throwing side. So, I know you guys specialize in the weight room and then shot put and discus, and I try to do my best to, obviously with Brett here, work on the strength and conditioning side of stuff, and then also do the javelin side with Jack Javelin. So talk to us a little bit about Garage Strength. I went out and visited you there last year, got a power clean there, if that's what you want to call it. Power clean front squat.
Loose term on that one.
But so yeah, that was definitely a pretty memorable trip that I had, and it was just a great time, great atmosphere. So I know that you went to train post-collegiately, but you ended up moving out there about 2 years ago. So talk a little bit about that process and how Garage Strength kind of helped you professionally as a coach and then also as an athlete.
Yeah, so I first learned about Garage Strength through the tail end of my collegiate career. Some of the athletes that I competed with at nationals were being coached by Dane of Garage Strength. So just naturally, I always wanted to see what they were doing just to kind of get that, I guess, edge of hey, they're doing this. Maybe I should, try to do it as well. So I was always very familiar with Dane and the Throws You Garage Strength system. But I would really say once I graduated in 2017, that's when I really was like, all right, I need to figure this out. I tried doing my own coaching and it did not go anywhere. So I was like, all right, this is where I just need to get out of my comfort zone, reach out to someone who's actively coaching, someone who's actively doing it, and just really kind of just buy into that system. So when I initially started, I was just doing the Throws You programming and I could see a lot of strength gains, but it was on the slower end. But I was like, all right, I'm slowly getting better, and that's all I was looking for. And one of my training partners at the time, we went down to a Garage Strength meet. So we got to meet Dane, Trevor, Tamon, all the guys, Sam Mattis, Noah Kennedy White. We got to meet all the guys. And through, competing with them, I had a conversation with Dane, and he was like, why aren't you on my custom programming? And it took me by surprise. I was like, huh? He was like, yeah, why aren't you on my custom programming? I think you could be good. I think you should be on my custom programming. And I was like starstruck. I was like, you know what? I'll hop on it tonight. So I literally signed up for his custom programming. And ever since that point, my career has done a 180. I remember the first program, I'll never forget this. The first program, he wanted me to front squat and he put 385 on. I think it's was that 175, somewhere around there. And I was like, I've never done that. My front squat max is 365. And he wanted me to do that for a double. So I was like, all right, this is the system. This is what I'm getting myself into. I got to figure it out. And that day I actually did it. I did 385 for two. So I was like, dude, this system clearly works. And, just being a part of that and seeing it for myself, I was like, dude, I got to be full in. I got to learn everything from head to toe about what this system is and, how I can truly learn and be a better athlete and be a better coach, for the athletes that I do work with today. So ever since that point, I was like, dude, I need to learn, I need to grow, and I need to be in this system. And ever since then, I've just been doing that same thing. And, I'm trying to take everything I'm learning and give it to the athletes, of today so that they can get to where I'm at an easier pace.
Yeah, so you were able to break 60 meters this year finally. And how old are you? 30?
I'm 30, yeah.
Okay, so it took you how many years to get to that point?
A very long time. In 2017, I think I was 23, 22, 23 at the time. I just hit 50 meters. And after that, it's just been a slow burn, really chipping away. I would say I really had my breakout year in 2021, like just after COVID. Luckily, COVID kind of helped me out because it just gave me that motivation to train every day. 'Cause, we had a lot more time. So I really focused on throwing every day. 'Cause before then, I wasn't really throwing every day. I was training hard, but it wasn't as consistent as it was in 21. And in 21, I came very close to making the Olympic trials. Like I just missed out on the last spot by like, I think it was like 3 inches. So like that was very frustrating, but I was like, all right, like I gotta really piece it together. And I think that year I went 58. So I went from 50 to 58 in a couple years. And then from 58 to 60, I think was, like 2 more years. But the biggest thing was just like getting stronger, getting faster, and just getting better technique.
What role, because you're a little bit undersized compared to some of the discus throwers out there. So, what role has strength and putting on muscle mass contributed to your throwing?
For me personally, I think it was everything. I won't say I have the best technique. I think I have a specific style that works for me. But just getting stronger was like the biggest thing. Even in my collegiate career, like I always considered myself an average thrower coming out of high school. Like I wasn't big, I wasn't the strongest, but I was like decent enough to get by. But, my college coach, Sean McCabe, he's at Holy Cross now. He gave me a football program this year going into my junior year, and he was like, dude, if you commit to this program, I promise you, all the goals that you have, you'll get. So I committed myself to that program and I got stronger and I was able to do a lot of the stuff that I set myself out for. But post collegiately, it was like, all right, I got to take that base and I got to build it tenfold. And ever since then, it was like, all right, I got to get stronger as I, improve my technique. But just getting stronger just put me in a better position to throw further.
You've made a post before about the technique versus style, and you just mentioned it there. So this is what made me want to ask it. How important is it to blend the two and to, yes, improve your technique, but not to the point where it diminishes your own unique style?
Absolutely. So I think every athlete has their way of throwing, but there are core concepts that everyone has to do, right? Like in discus, right? You got to make sure if you're a right-handed thrower that you're getting your weight shifted over your left side for that right to then get around. When your right ground's in the middle, your left has to get off quick and work around the right. And then when you're in your power position, you got to make sure that you're working through double support so everything can drive into your finish. Those are the core concepts, but how you get those done can be different from, person to person. And I think we're really starting to see that more today than, ever before, where it's like you have some guys who are very technical and can throw far, and you have some guys who are just really, really strong who get it done. So I think it really just comes down to the athlete, but at the end of the day, like it's still like, relatively similar movements. It's just, it's the core concepts.
What are some of those core concepts, just for people that have no idea? Because I know Dan talks about the javelin a lot and the different positions that you need to hit. So, what is something that you're looking for in athletes, and does it change from skill level as you progress up?
That's a good question. I think in the general sense, because I work with, a bunch of different athletes, like I have middle school athletes, I have high school athletes, and I have some collegiate athletes, and all of them are working within the same like frame. So it's like We want to make sure that we are pivoting on our feet, right? We have to do a good job of pivoting. We got to make sure that we are holding positions throughout the circle. I'm thinking more so like shot put right now. We got to make sure that we're holding positions, and then we got to make sure that we are getting to a good power position, right? Because like you're not going to be able to transfer, all of the forces and energy that you're creating if you're not getting to a good power position. So like a lot of the athletes are doing the same general concepts as I've been saying, but just how they go about that could be a little bit different.
So a big thing that I talk about in javelin is the idea of action versus reaction. And so talk a little bit about that in terms of discus and shot put even, and just talk a little bit about how you don't want to maybe just shed some light on what are the differences between trying to like force the throw versus having it be a reaction.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think a lot of the times it's like if you ask any thrower like, "Hey, your best throw, what did it feel like?" Majority of the time they're gonna be like, "I didn't feel like anything different." You know what I mean? I feel like that's where it's more like that reaction. It's like you're building your base to the point where it's like you can go out there, not think at all, and hit something big. Whereas on the other spectrum of that, it's like when you try extremely hard, I think that's when you start thinking more, and then that's where like the error can come in within your technique. So like I know sometimes I fall into this where like I just want to hit something hard. Like I just want to throw as hard as physically possible. And sometimes when I do that, I try a little too hard and it doesn't go as far. And then when I take that step back and it's like, all right, I'm just going to focus on my technique. I'm not going to try to focus on, I guess, the outcome of throwing far. And that's when I usually start throwing far.
Does tensing up and getting almost too fired up, does that like hurt the throw in discus when you're not focused on staying relaxed, would you say?
I would say majority of the time. I think sometimes you can kind of get away with that, but from a general standpoint, I think the more relaxed that you can be and the more that you can trust in your technique, right, your preparation for that moment, I think the better.
You talked about the power position. So with the block side, are you trying to actively like pull down the block leg and the block arm? Are you trying to brace it all, or what does that feel like in the discus? Like when you're transferring from that spin to then hitting your front leg on the ground and then rotating the rest of your body through.
Yeah, I actually think there's a lot of commonalities between the events. I think it's very similar to what you're doing in Javelin, where it's like with a discus as a right-handed thrower, when your left is moving out of the back, right? We like to say like sprint off the left. When you're sprinting off the left and you're grounding that bad boy at the front, it's like you got to slam the brakes, right? You got to hold that block side strong so that that right side can work long around the left. It's very similar in Javelin where it's like when you're going down the runway and you hit your, penultimate, you got to hold that black. You got to hold your block side strong so that your right side can work long into the finish, right? You can be nice and long, relaxed. You can get that roll under and just transfer everything forward. It's the same thing in discus where it's like when you get to your power position, that left block side has to hold strong so that you have a sense of direction forward as your right is working around.
When you have a shot putter who glides and then they also throw discus and they're rotational, what's some of the disconnect there that you see where why would they not be rotational in the shot put?
That's a great question. I actually fall under that lens. I am a discus guy. I can spin in discus. I cannot spin in shot. I am a glider through and through. I've tried spinning in shot. For whatever reason, it just does not click. And I think athletes who fall in that lens, it's like sometimes the glide is just because it's so simple, you don't have to think, so you can just do.
Mm.
Now, going back to what I was saying before, like it really just comes down to the preparation and the training, just making sure that you're in a position where you can really kind of just shut your mind off and just go out there and compete. But it's just like with the spin, like it's so intricate, like there are so many details that I think sometimes it kind of just like, gets bogged down in the brain and just makes the athlete think a little bit more.
You've talked about general strength and how that is important. Obviously, I don't think anyone's going to debate that. But how do you play into getting a little bit faster, jumping a little bit higher, the plyometrics, so sprint, jump, plyos? How did that all get into your training to help you perform and progress the way that you have? And how do you use that with your athletes as well?
So I think everything just comes down to the time of year. Every summer, I make an annual plan where we start from nationals and we work our way back, right? And the focus is like, all right, we're working from general to specific. So the first few months of our program is just building the base, right? We're going to get stronger and we're just going to focus on just, force production, just all of that. I guess not force production, but just getting stronger, right? We're working strength, we're working hypertrophy, and we're building our base. And then once we establish that foundation, then we're going to slowly start to move to more specific parameters. So we're going to be working on more power stuff. We're going to be jumping more. We're going to incorporate some short sprints, just, more athletic movements to be faster, to be more powerful, to apply more force into the implements, stuff like that. And then throughout the year, the volume will be higher and slowly start to taper down, but the intensity will slowly start to taper up. And it's just like putting ourselves in a position to be successful.
So I know in the javelin world, there's a lot of different thought processes around training. Some people are very heavy in the weight room, others are not. Others are very against it, actually, I would say. And even in the technique side, there's a lot of disconnect between certain coaches and training principles depending on your background, your experience, where you're from. Is there any of that in discus and shot put as well, where, across the United States or the world, are there people that disagree with the garage strength system?
Yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot of people who disagree with, you know, I guess our system to some degree. I think once you get to the higher level, you really start to realize like a lot of these guys are doing the same thing, right? They might go about it a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, like you have to have good technique and you have to be strong. Those two things are consistent around some of the top athletes. Now, what, or I guess, how strong is too strong? I think that's where there's some disconnect because, like, you have like guys like Daniel Stahl. He's extremely strong. I don't think they put as much video out there of some of his feats, but Dane has been around him. Dane has talked to his coach, and they talk about this stuff, and like he's extremely strong. So like we take some of those principles and like we apply them to our camp. Like Sam Mattis is extremely strong. Sam Mattis threw 71 meters. Daniel Stahl obviously is extremely strong. He's thrown 72 several occasions. It's like myself, like I'm getting stronger. I just threw over 60. It's like why are you not taking what the best are doing and trying to, you know, do that yourself? And I think sometimes it's like we have coaches who or like, no, like, you can be strong, but like you have to be more athletic, which I agree. I think there are a lot of different facets that you have to bring in to make a total package. And I think sometimes people see what we do and it's like, those guys are just meatheads. Like all they want to do is just get stronger. It's like, you're not wrong. We want to get stronger, but if you look at what we do, like we're always putting out technique stuff. We're always evolving our technique. We are putting out information on like how to get better technique. So it's not like just getting stronger is the only thing that you can do to be better. It's like you have to be technique, you have to be technical, you have to get better technique. You do have to get stronger, but you also have to be an athlete. Like you have to be able to move, you have to be mobile, you have to be flexible. You have to have a good diet. Like, you have to get sleep, you have to hydrate. Like there are a lot of other ways to get better. And it's just like one of those things where it's like just because we do one thing more or we do one thing and we put an emphasis doesn't mean like you can't get better through different lens or, that you have to do something completely different. I think it just really comes down to you, your system, and how you can get better.
I know a lot of coaches have that debate, just how strong is strong enough, or what's the point of increasing this lift and to push to get stronger, whatever it is. So, how do you guys go about tracking important metrics, like the key performance indicators, the KPIs? What are some of the things in the weight room that you look for, that you prioritize, that if a person comes in day one, you want to get them here in 3 months, 6 months, wherever down the road, to say, all right, we're going on the right path. This is what we're going to focus on.
Yeah, I think I have it kind of easy with the shot putters, discus throwers. I guess the easiest KPI for me is how far are they throwing right now, right? So if I get an athlete to come in, I'll see how far they throw. And it's like, okay, that gives me a good baseline of where they can improve. So if I have a thrower who can throw relatively far, but they move slow, it's like, okay, maybe we got to focus on speed. Or if I have an athlete who moves fairly well, but just isn't throwing far, it's like, we got to work on strength. So from that, I guess, baseline assessment, it's like, okay, we're going to target these things during practice. We're going to target these things in the weight room. And then it's building those capabilities, those facets, so that when we, test later down the road, it's like, did you get better? And that's something that we do. We test every 13 weeks where it's like, all right, we have our baseline. Let's put these athletes through the work and let's see where they, you know, come after the 13 weeks. And then from that testing period, it's like we reassess. It's like, okay, did they get stronger and did that help their throws? Yes. All right, let's keep building. No. All right, let's keep building, right? Regardless, we're going to keep building. We're going to keep figuring out how we can put these athletes in a position to be successful.
So, when you say test, you're testing not just the throw, but the lifts associated with it as well.
Yeah, yeah. So for our tests at Garage Strength, we test the clean, the back squat, the bench, pull-ups, jumps, like vertical jumps, broad jumps, and then sometimes just as like a fun, like we'll do a snatch. So we'll test those exercises in the weight room, but they have their tests of just like competing, just throwing far. Like, can you throw further than you did, when you first got here? And I think for me, like that's the easiest indicator of whether they're getting better or not.
Do you ever look at Werner Gunther's training and try to simulate what you do with yourself or your athletes and base it off of that training style? I know that those clips go viral all the time when people post them, and he's got that was the purple shirt and he's just doing the bounds and then just like jumping up the stairs and he's just like a monster. So, what do you ever model anything after him?
I definitely think a lot of what we do at Garage Strength has kind of derived from some of, those training clips. Excuse me. And just training, excuse me, training concepts just as a whole. Like he was a great athlete. Why wouldn't we learn from what he did to get to where he's at? So I think a lot of those concepts we do take in. Obviously, we have to modify those because we're working with high school athletes. Like I'm working with high school and middle school athletes. So like a lot of those stuffs we can't, do in the space that we have limits us a little bit, but a lot of the core concepts we do incorporate, like, you have to be springy, like you have to do jumps, you have to do plyometrics, and we have a whole day dedicated to just that. We call it our athlete day, where, we're doing sprints, we're doing jumps, we're doing a lot of ballistic stuff with the med ball, just so we can, work on that aspect of being an athlete.
What would you say to people that look at some of the top guys and say, oh, you don't want to model what you're doing after the top guys because the top guys are just genetically gifted and they could get away with XYZ because they are elite, and you should teach high school and college level guys that are lower than that level differently because they are not the same athlete as the high level guy?
I think there is some truth to that. I do think some of the top athletes, you know, are there because, they are genetically gifted in some way. But I think at the end of the day, like they all work just as hard. Like Daniel Stahl, Lekna, like some of those guys, it's just like, yeah, they're big, they're strong, They might be genetically gifted or, crafted to throw discus, but at the end of the day, like they all started somewhere. Like we all started from nothing. And it's like those guys, figured it out. They put in the work, they got to the point where, they are the best of the best. And I think at the end of the day, it's like anyone can work hard. Like you can get better, even if it's like just a little bit. You can see what those guys are doing, learn from it, figure out how you can incorporate that into your system and get better. You know what I mean? Like it's not overly complicated. Not everything that they do should be something that you do, but like everything that they do is something you should learn about and, figure out how you can incorporate something like that into your training system so you can get better. It's
You
like having a toolbox. You're not gonna try to nail a nail with a wrench. You need a hammer, right? So it's finding that right tool and getting the job done.
You mentioned your ballistic speed athlete day, and I'm just curious how like a full week of training would look like for you or for your athletes. And is it different depending on the level of middle school, high school, college, professional, and just how do you go about structuring that?
Yeah, so a typical training week for us, our day one, and this is depending on time of year, but day one, usually we focus on lower body strength. Day two, we'll do upper body strength. Day three, like I said, we'll do our athlete day. And day four, I like to do a total body day. And that day will change depending on time of year. So, like during the initial part of the year, we're just going to do hypertrophy on that day. But towards like the championship season, like when we're peaking, that will be an impulse day where we're just trying to be like fast, we're trying to move quick and trying to be explosive, priming those athletes for a competition, within that weekend. During our athlete day, and now this will kind of change throughout the year, but usually I try to incorporate an Olympic lift. So like I focus more on cleans with our athletes just because that's what we test. But on an athlete day, like I will teach them how to snatch, whether that's from the ground, off boxes, or from the hang position. Like I think that's the perfect time to figure out how to snatch because the intensity of that workout initially is just a little bit lower. And then we'll transition into some, short hops. We'll incorporate some med ball exercises and just kind of go from there. And we'll work on mobility towards the end because you have to be mobile to hit position. So, um, you know, to give you like a very general answer, we just try to hit everything, just try to be explosive, work on rate of force development during that time and just throughout the year. And as they get closer to peaking, variables will change.
I think that's really cool just to hear the context behind it. You're saying the tools in the toolbox. And my opinion with the elite athletes is if you're not elite, then you need to work just that much harder just to level the playing field. And I think that's what strength conditioning offers for a lot of athletes because you can't just choose to wake up and be like, I'm going to just be like LeBron James today. Like it doesn't happen. You have to put in the work in the weight room. And you saying how it was with the toolbox is really cool because you're going to give them more resources in order to express that, whatever sport they play, whether it's throwing, football, baseball. And I'm just curious, is there something that you've done in the past that was part of your toolkit as a coach that you don't really have as much use for anymore?
Hmm, that's a good question.
I stole it from Dan. That was Dan's question. He said that before on another pod. I was like, I'm going to use it right now.
Do I have anything that I used to do? Hmm. Wow, that actually stumped me. I don't really know.
Let's go, baby.
That's a good
I mean,
question.
I'll say mine. So, just to give you a little bit of thought, is when I first came into coaching, I was Louis Simmons, West Side Barbell, conjugate system, max strength was all that mattered. And I was powerlifting at the time. So I had a very big bias towards powerlifting, the barbell movements. Bench, squat, deadlift. I thought if my kids got all that, they would be better. And we tested every 13 weeks at the gym I was at. We were similar. And not a single one of them jumped higher or got faster. But their squat, bench, and deadlift all went up. So I'm like, oh, I think I'm missing something. And changed my priorities into more of the, instead of just having an athlete day randomly sprinkled in, I made it a thing in their warm up to make sure we sprint every single day to some capacity, some type of jump or plyometric, and some type of just athletic based movement. Because I don't know how you guys have it structured at Garage Gym, but where we were at, kids weren't coming in every single day. It would be like a Monday or Thursday, or if upper body day is Monday and a Thursday is a full body day, they're not getting a dedicated athlete day if they're coming in twice a week. So I just try to make it happen every day. So that's something that I didn't eliminate squat, bench, deadlift completely, but I definitely changed my mindset and approach as to how I looked at athletic training as a whole. So that's something that I've definitely shifted more towards. So I don't know if that helps give you a little bit more of a approach as to how you want to answer the question.
Yeah, yeah. No, I actually think that was very helpful. Thank you. That definitely gave me a little more context. I think one thing that I've really learned, and more so this year, especially being at Garage Strength, is like, and this kind of ties back into the question you asked beforehand, where it's like, how do you differentiate, a middle school athlete to a top athlete like, the LeBron or like, in our case, like Ryan Krauser. And I think one thing it's like for those middle school athletes, they have to stay within that general realm, right? We have to focus on just the general core training concepts before they can start to move into advanced movements, right? Like a Ryan Krauser or, what we do at, like myself and Taman Legend, like some of the professionals. And I think in the 3 years that I've been at Garage Strength, that has definitely evolved where it's like I don't have to have these middle schoolers doing all these crazy jumps to get better. We could just do like jumping rope. We can do mini hurdle hops. We could just do med ball slams for a very long period of time, and those athletes will get better, right? We can keep things general as much as possible, and they will see improvement. We have one athlete, and this is more so Dane's athlete. We have one athlete at the gym. Her name is Loveland. This girl is the craziest athlete you'll ever see. She is in eighth grade and can clean over, I think her clean, she just hit 200 pounds. I'm pretty sure, I forget what her back squat is. It's something ridiculous. Like, this girl is extremely strong. And the reason why she is so strong is because they focused on just the general core concepts. She cleans every day, she snatches every day, she squats every day. She trains, I believe it's 3, sometimes 4 days a week, and they just focus on that. And this girl is one of the strongest girls at our gym. So I think, being at Garage Strength has definitely changed my I guess practices with like the younger athletes where it's like we're just going to stay in this general realm until they really just develop as a athlete as a whole, and then as they start to get older, that's when we can start moving into more specifics.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing strength and conditioning coaches have their athletes run around with a lacrosse stick or doing like the agility drills, like the hyper specialization. It's like they just came from lacrosse practice and they're coming to you to get better at lacrosse and you're doing lacrosse drills through hurdles with the stick. It's like, dude, you're a strength and conditioning coach. It's like your job is not to teach lacrosse. It's to give them that general base. And I love the quote. I think it was Jay Schroeder that was saying it, but it was like the wider the base of general physical preparedness, the higher the peak of the SPP can be. And I think that is just a great mindset to approach, not even just youth, but I mean, I definitely get caught in the trap of wanting to do more exciting advanced movements when in reality, GPP is probably all that's really needed at the end of the day.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And like I said, I'm seeing it right now. Like I have another middle schooler. I coach her personally. And when she first got here, like she wasn't doing anything like spectacular. And it's like, okay, like how can I make this athlete, better? How can I make her, want to be here, but like do something, spectacular? And we literally just stuck to the core concepts. And now she's at a point where like, I made a video on this the other day on Throws University where I told this girl, like, hey, I want you to throw for distance. And she did. And we marked each of her furthest throws with a cone. And I was like, okay, I see where you are currently at. I put a line out, I want to say it was like 3 feet further than her best toss. And I was like, all right, if you have the remainder of practice to do this. If you throw over the line, we won't have core today. Because I'm having them do planks and they all hate it. But it's like we have to do it to, you know, build trunk stability. And I was like, all right, if you throw past this line, you don't have core today. And you have the remainder of practice. We had like 20 minutes left, and you can get a bunch of tosses in within 20 minutes. So the first one, she got past her best, but it wasn't past the cone. I was like, okay, like you're in a good spot. And then the next one, it was a little short of the cone. So I was like, oh, like you're gonna have to really push it. The third one, smacked it way over the line. I'm freaking out because I was like, dude, like that's it. Like that's what you need to do. Like that's how you work the finish. And she was so happy. Like the people around her were like, jazzed up, and it's like, all right, you don't have core today. But within that moment, like yesterday's practice, I was like, hey, like this is what you did to throw over the line. Let's try that again. And she was able to do it. And like I didn't have to instruct her. And it's like because we focused on just like core concepts for a very long time, like we're now at a point where it's like I can just say one thing and she'll go out and do it. So it's like that's where it's like I think as a coach, like that's what we want to see as an athlete. That's where you want to be, and it's just like continuing to bridge that gap to get the athlete to a point where it's like because I did all of this work and all this preparation, I can go out and compete and not think about it.
What psychology plays into measuring in practice or having a target to hit or trying to reach a new goal out in the sector when we go to a line or a distance or a cone or whatever? Like where does that come into play in training, and when is it not needed?
That's actually a great question. I think you go either way. I think when practice is getting a little tough and athletes are starting to get a little emotional, that's where it's like, okay, let's take a step back and let's not throw for distance anymore. Let's just focus on technique. But then like on the other spectrum of that, like if you see an athlete is doing well, it's like, hey, I want to challenge you a little bit. Let's put a cone out and let's see how far you can throw today. And I think that just from the psychology of it, like it makes things interesting. It alerts the athlete. It's like, hey, let's, go attack it. And I think as a coach, it's like really managing those emotions, just making sure that, the athlete's not in a position to crash out, quote unquote,
Yeah.
or like, get too overstimulated. I think that's where it's like we have to put the athlete in a position where it's like, you know, they can go, I guess, like a happy medium. You have to be in a happy medium from not crashing out, but like not being too overly stimulated, just so we can see results. And I think that really just comes back to the preparation of things. Like before we, or before I have an athlete measure, it's like we have to go through a couple training days where it's like everything is going good. And if I see everything is going good, let's go have fun. Like it's your reward. You've been training well. Let's go have fun. But like if training's not really going well, it's like, all right, hey, let's shift our focus. Let's focus, on continuing to develop your technique. And when you get to a point where things are looking good, like let's have fun. Let's do it.
Yeah, you definitely have to read the room, and sometimes the technique is just not there, and sometimes the kids are crushed from a long week of training, and the power is just not there. So you definitely don't want to over ask, throwing certain distances and PRs, and then you kind of get to see how the practice is flowing, how the athletes are feeling, and when you notice something is hot, then you can, keep throwing the fuel on the fire and egg them on to go a little bit further. We just had an example of that last week where I had one of my throwers who was throwing right at his PR from the spring, and he was doing that in practice and fall training, and I was like, hey, let's try to push it a little bit. And in the same session, I had another athlete that was not doing that and felt very dead and was missing the point on every throw. And then for him, I was like, hey, let's scale it back a little bit and just work on the block and work on getting through the throw and finishing through the point. And so when you guys have, you talked about that annual plan that you came up with, and obviously during that annual plan, there's monthly plans and weekly plans and daily plans all within that. How much do you deviate from the program if you ever need to adjust?
That's a good question. I really try not to deviate as much because the training plan, like the annual plan, is there for a reason, right? It's a roadmap to help guide the athletes to be successful. So I really try not to deviate as much, but sometimes it's just needed. You know what I mean? Like right now, I have our athletes working with a heavy implement and the comp implement, and they do not want to work with a heavy implement right now at all. They just want to work with the comp weight and they want to throw far. And it's like, I understand where you're coming from, but this is part of the system. You told me your goals, and it's my job to make sure that you're in a position to do that. So it's like, we can't deviate from this just because you feel like it. We have to go through each part of our annual plan. So then when it's time to compete really well, you're in that position to do that. But on the other hand, it's like if training is going really well, I got to reward my people. I'm a softie, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna reward you if you're doing well, and maybe it's like we won't throw the heavy, we'll just throw the comp today. So I think in the general sense, it's like try to stick to that plan as best as possible. But every once in a while, you can spice it up a little bit. You can change it, but I think in the core concept, just stick to the plan.
So I know that you guys seem like a pretty serious gym. Like I've been there, right? It's really intense. You guys are after it in the weight room. Like you said earlier, you're viewed as meatheads, and you got girls power cleaning 200 pounds in middle school. So do you guys ever find yourself playing games at these training sessions at Garage Strength to try to have fun with the athletes? Or is that something where you guys are just kind of more, I'm all about business. My form of reward as a coach is no core, no heavy implement, and that's about it.
No, we play games, but it's you got to be rewarded. You got to earn it. Just like anything, you have to earn it. Like sometimes I'll let the kids play spike ball. Like we'll have a day on our athlete day, more so, or on because we train 4 days out of the week. On that fifth day, if we have nothing and everyone has gone through training, let's go have fun. Let's play spike ball. One year I had them play tag. I was like, all right, like let's just have fun. Sometimes I'll hop in, and spice things up.
Got to show them who's boss.
I'll show them who's the best athlete out here, but it's just like one of those things where it's like if you do everything that I'm asking and training is going super well, like I'm gonna reward you. That's how we create more buy-in, right? Create more trust with the athlete. Like I want to make sure that the athlete is, they feel safe in this environment at all times. Like, yeah, I'm gonna push you and I'm gonna challenge you, but at the end of the day, like I'm here to support you. Like I want you to be a better person, a better athlete and reach your goals a lot quicker than I did. And a little spice in there, but I want to make sure that every athlete comes in and they're like, dude, like this is a safe space for me. Like I can have fun, even though sometimes these workouts suck and they're hard. At the end of the day, I got better. I'm a better person. I'm a better athlete, and just like I'm part of this community.
Well, you talked about how you hit your PR this year at 30 years old. Jan Zalesny, the world record holder in the Javelin, threw his PR at 30 years old. We had Curtis Thompson, who we just had on the show last week, came in third at the World Championships through a PR this year at 29 years old. At what point does that long-term athletic development contribute into throwing? And are you typically seeing that later 20s, early 30s? Is that where people are hitting their PRs? Or do you see people peak really early or peak in their later 30s ever?
I think in the term of discus, it's usually later on. In my, I guess, tail end of the collegiate career, my coach always told me, like, if you look at some of the top guys, like, they're all in their 30s. And I think that still kind of plays a role in today. Like, some of the top guys are still, hitting far throws in their 30s. Now, we definitely have younger guys throwing extremely far, now that information's more readily available and training systems are getting a lot better. But I do think there's still a space in throwing, especially at the higher level for, older athletes. I think just like if you think about our sport, like it's mastery, right? Skill, or I guess any sport is like skill mastery, and it's like it takes a very long time to get close to that term master. I don't know if anyone's ever been like a true master, but like a lot of athletes have gotten very close, and those are the athletes who have been doing it for a very long time. So I think in terms of myself, there's still a lot of things that I have to learn as an athlete to throw further, and I'm definitely getting closer than I've ever been. And obviously, we saw that last year when I threw over 60 meters. I did it twice in the same competition. Um, but it's like as I continue to learn and as I continue to develop, like I'm gonna put myself in a position where like maybe I go 62, maybe I go 63. Who knows? Maybe at Ramona I go 65. Like, it's possible.
What do you say to the people that don't validate the Ramona throws?
You guys are lame. Just plain and simple. You guys are lame. Like, what does it matter? You know, I think Ramona is super cool. It's a great community. What they're doing over there is phenomenal. But it's like just because you threw far at Ramona doesn't mean you're gonna throw far, come championship. Look at Alekna. He threw 75. And Alekna's my dog. Like I love that dude. He got silver. You know what I mean? Like Daniel Stahl didn't come out to Ramona. He won. He got gold. You know what I mean? So it's like I think Ramona for what they're doing is cool, and anyone can get out there. Like it's not limited to the top pros. Like they have competitions almost every weekend. You
Hmm.
can go out there and you can throw far. Like I think as people are starting to notice Ramona, like they're getting more attention. They're getting more people. For the people who say like, "Oh, like it's unfair," like I'm sorry, like so what? At the end of the day, like the championship, you have to show up. You have to be prepared. So I don't know. That's my biased answer. I think it's cool. I like it. The community is dope. A lot of people have gone out and thrown far, and that's the essence of our sport. It's throwing far. Why would you be upset that someone's throwing far? You know what I mean? Like I get it, like the win, like it does help, but like I think one thing that like always bugs me is like, oh, like these guys back in the day weren't doing that. Yeah, those guys were on drugs. Like they didn't need to
Yeah,
do it. They were
yeah,
cheating in a different way. So like,
yeah. I mean, I would say that is also true with the javelin, like with the drug aspect, and then also you hear a lot of comparison to guys that threw in the 70s and 80s that were using the old rule javelin as well. So it's just at the end of the day, you only know what you know, right? And I think that that's part of the disconnect there with, oh, these guys were doing this and that and training this way. And it was a different implement back then. It's literally designed to go 10 meters less now. So I think that it's like obviously that was for safety reasons because at the high levels you were throwing across the whole football field and hitting the high jumpers sometimes. And so now obviously we reconfigured the way that the javelin is, but it flies different. It's different, and you need to adapt with the times and adjust how you do things and how you view things. And that's something that I've always prided myself on, is trying to be a forward thinker in the space and try to really connect with as many shot put, discus, javelin coaches all across the country and learn what I can from each aspect of the sport and each different training background and see how it can apply to my own philosophy. So, I mean, I think that as time goes on too, I mean, you see the top guys and girls are at Ramona, like Valerie and Alekna. And I mean, if they're doing it, then it's obviously got to have validation all the way down. You can't just disregard it because of the weather, and it's like at the end of the day, like you said, everyone has to show up and compete. That mark from Ramona does not carry over to the world championships or the US championships. So you need to be able to do it again, or You need to be able to do it at a level where you're still showing up that day and beating other people regardless of what the weather is.
Absolutely. And I think from the psychology part of it, it's like, dude, if you see yourself throw far that early in the season, that's just going to set you up for the remainder of the season. You know what I mean? Like, you know that you can do it. Yeah, the wind might have aided you to some extent, but it's like, dude, you prepared your body to throw far. The first time I went to Ramona, I didn't throw far. There were a few of us who didn't PR. Like everyone thinks like, oh, you go down Ramona to PR. Now that is true, but it's like you have to know how to do it. You have to know how to throw in the wind. The wind is very strong, and if you do not throw it right, it's not going anywhere. So like, looking at just like the results, you see like the results are inflated, and you're like, dude, like, no, like shut it down, like they're cheating and all of that. But it's like you have to know how to do it to get any gain from it. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I mean you threw what 59 last year without Ramona, right? And then you threw 60 this year with Ramona. I mean, it's a 1 meter difference. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that you'd be able to do that at Merrimack College. If you go throw there, whatever. You know what I mean?
Go back to the alma mater, yeah. Soon, I'm hoping to get back out there, and I would love to throw 60 there. That's like a dream goal of mine.
Yeah, that'd be huge. What's the school record at Merrimack? Like where you're from? I was just looking at the top 10 list at my college the other day, and it was just crazy because it's like number 2 is 69 meters, and then number 2 through 10 is 61 to 69, and then the number 1 is 84. So I was just like, it's just crazy because it looks like such an outlier. But do you know what the school record was there
For
for discus for Merrimack?
for discus, I believe it was 48 meters. It's No, it's somewhere between 46 to 48. I believe it was Nathan Quay. He was one of the athletes that I coached there. At one point, I coached all of the school records, but since then, records get broken as athletes are getting better. So a lot of the records have changed. But I believe it was somewhere between 46 to 48. It might have been 47. But
Sweet. Nice.
yeah, no, they're killing over there. Like when I got to Merrimack, it was a very small team of just javelin throwers, and I had no clue about javelin throw. I was like, all right, I just got to figure this out. And just throughout the years, it's like, all right, if I want to be the best coach that I'm gonna be, like, I have to learn. And, through the group of javelin throwers that I started off with, it just made me better. Like, I had to think outside of the box, to put these throwers in a position to be successful. And, each year got slowly better and better to the point where it's like, Merrimack is, they're a top competitor in New England. Like, obviously, Southern Connecticut, you guys have the system. Like, you guys were a total package. When I was competing to right before I left Merrimack, like you guys, were a top dog, but it's like, we were learning from what you guys were doing over there and incorporating it into our system. And, before I left, like we were definitely top contenders in the New England area. And they're still, slowly building that even, after I've been gone. So,
Yeah.
shout out to you guys, shout out to Merrimack. Like, I hope all those throwers in the New England area keep building so we can show the rest of the country, like, yo, like New England's where it's at.
Yeah, exactly. Connecticut, javelin capital of the U.S.
Yeah, no, I agree, dude. I
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, I think that what it comes down to is, like you said, when you were at Merrimack, you started building a system. At Southern Connecticut, where I went and where I coached Jordan, we built a system. And now through Garage Strength, you guys have a system. Through Jack Javelin, we now have a system, or I have a system. And so I think that just goes to show that, like, you have to have a system, a philosophy, training partners, a coach, and that will accelerate your success, because the people that don't have that, it's very rare that you have tremendous amounts of success when you're doing it completely on your own.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm an example of that. I tried doing it by myself when I was post-collegiate, and I think I gained maybe a meter in a year. And then as soon as I started getting coaching from Dane, I literally jumped up 7 meters. Like, because I was in a system that was, that has worked for other athletes and, has proven itself from year to year. It put me in a position to be successful. And, it's the same thing I'm doing with Garage Strength at Throwers University. It's the same thing that you're doing with Jack Javelin.
Yeah. All right, Sam. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was great. And good luck to you next year. All right.
Absolutely. Stay Jack, baby.
Yeah, let's go. That's awesome. That's going to be the thumbnail.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.
And if you enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and review and share the show, because the only way that this show grows is if you like it, share it, and tell your friends and family about it.
New episode every Monday.